I did it. I sold my FS5 Mark II, my Adamus recorder, and I bought a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. I didn't even want to talk about it until I got at least 1 or 2 shoots under my belt. But now it's time to give you guys the truth. Do I regret it? Stay tuned. What's going on, guys? If this is your first time following this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. But let's just get right into it. Let's talk about the reasons as to why I purchased the FS5. We have a company where we do a lot of corporate video. We do mostly corporate video, mostly talking heads, B-rolls. Every now and then we do some run and gun stuff. We may do some car videos or things like that. But we bought FS5s. We had a Mark I and a Mark II for its portability, for its handheldness and quality. That's why we bought it. Really cheap, inexpensive media, decent picture, pretty decent picture. The FS5 is good at a lot of things, but it's not great at nothing. It's not the smallest camera. It's not the best image quality. It's not the best codec. It's not the, most compact. It's just not great at nothing other than an ND filter, but we'll get to that later. But we bought it because they were inexpensive. We can put 3 or 4 of them in a box of one of our cases. We can travel with it. We can get fairly decent images. But there were some things that were starting to bother me about the FS5. One, I will tell you, I used to have an A6500. That image quality was just as good, if not better. When we purchased A7Rs for the photography side, that image quality was better. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. And when I say better, I mean straight out of the camera better. I don't mean tweak and pull and punch dealing with data. However, straight out of the camera great, it was better. It was night and day difference. Low light, A7R, and the A6500 kind of whooped on the FS5. I mean, it did whoop on the FS5, not even kinda. It waxed the FS5 in low light. Autofocus, things like that. Things you wouldn't think a $12.99, A6500 should even be able to do. However, to me, when I see those things, it's kind of the writing on the wall that it's time to move on to different equipment. It's time to upgrade. And I am a firm believer of moving bodies while they're still relevant. I learned this by moving a FS700 as soon as the FS5 was announced, and thank God, because I still got $5,000–6,000 for it. And as soon as the FS5 drops, the prices went down to $3,000. So I end up making an extra $2,000. And at that time, I went and bought 2 4K Blackmagic production cameras. We'll get to that in a minute, because that experience almost prevented me from going back to Blackmagic, but we'll talk about that in a minute. For me to get quality in the video production world, it is an arms race at times for quality, and not just a super great image, but a specific type of image. Corporate clients are starting to look for more cinematic images, and that's great. With a DSLR, you can work hard to achieve this. With the right camera, you can point and just capture it, and then tweak it and make it better and do what you need to do. So our goal was, how can we get more cinematic images without giving up what we love about the FS5, the small size, the handheldness of it. Though we have plans on purchasing a Ursa Mini G2, right now, a couple of Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras may do for what we need. On paper, there were some things that we really liked about it, as far as the raw capability, as far as the size. You're still getting 120 frames in HD. You're still getting 4K. You're getting 12-bit raw without a clunky Adamus recorder weighing the top of your supposedly little camera down. So it's just a pain when you're dealing with an FS5 and you got this huge 7-inch Adamus recorder with a cage that's heavy. It's a power hungry beast. You got to find a way to power it. You got to pretty much V-mount the whole setup, because the camera can run all day off a Sony battery. However, The recorder is huge, and they didn't up until recently come out with a 5-inch version, and you still have to buy an adapter to get SDI connection. So those things were a pain when using the FS5. And still, when you use it with that, you're not getting 12-bit unless you're doing cinema DNG. ProRes RAW is good. I have nothing against it other than it's only available in Final Cut Pro. And for serious color grading, we're dumping to DaVinci Resolve, and we'll get into that later. However, that was a deciding factor for whether or not I wanted to continue to move with the FS5. And let's be very clear and honest. If you're holding on to a FS5, the moment the A7S III drop, the value of your camera is going to die, simply because I can guarantee you that that camera will be 10-bit internal, maybe 12-bit, maybe 14-bit external. And because the FS5 is only 8-bit internal in 4K and 10-bit in 1080p, it's nothing to think about. It's not even close. Yeah, you can say, oh, the audio features are great. And that's one thing I do love about the camera is the XLRs, the great audio features. But the autofocus can't keep up with an A7 III right now. The low light can't keep up with an A7 III right now. As soon as the A7S III drop, the FS5 is dead. Listen to me. You're going to cut what you can get for the value of the camera completely in half when that camera drops. And I don't want to be holding on to old technology when that happens. You pay good money for these cameras, you get good money using these cameras, and they pay for themselves. You still want to get a reasonable offer for the cameras. Go search for FS700s right now. They're for sale for crazy prices and people don't want them. Yeah, you can put an adapter and get great 4K, but for what when I can get an A6500 and get 4K out of it? You're right. It's almost not the same because you're talking about 8-bit versus, 12-bit. However, to most people who are doing simple headshots, they don't care. Smaller cameras are always better because you can do more with them. You can accessorize them more. Gimbals are cheaper. Lenses are cheaper. Things are cheaper for smaller cameras. It's just where the market is going for a large chunk of people, not everybody. Specifically for what we do, we were looking for something different. So again, why the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera? Why not the GH5? Why not other cameras? There's a few reasons. The big reasons is Blackmagic RAW. That's a huge factor. The look of the camera, 12-bit internally without no bulky recorder. A monitor is fine. I'm okay with that. If you rig it right, you may not need a monitor. A majority of what we do is on tripods. So we have monitors, but the monitor on the back of it is excellent, but I can strip all that out and still do it. I can't strip a FS5 down to the complete box with a lens and still capture 12-bit raw footage. Only 8-bit 4K, and it's just not acceptable anymore. The cinematic look of the camera, the color of the camera, the color science with the camera, how aggressive Blackmagic is for updates with their newer cameras. I'm sorry, Ursa 4K, 4.6K original owners, you guys are getting no love right now. Hopefully they'll do something to change it. But dual native ISO, things like that. Phantom power XLR. Now it is a downgrade, so to speak, for audio, but not that much of a downgrade. There's things you can do to overcompensate or compensate or make these cameras even in that area. But for me, the price allowed me to sell a FS5 for around $3,000, buy a Blackmagic Pocket for $12.99, and spend the rest of that money accessorizing it, adding the things that we need to make it more than functional. So it was a no-brainer to go with that particular camera over other particular cameras. And we looked at X-Cams and Kinefinities and things like that that were, I'm not gonna say I need to see more from them before we make a decision, but I felt like, especially talking to the companies at NAB and owning a Blackmagic before, I felt like Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras were the way to go. Now, I owned a 4K production camera back in the day. And there were things I loved about it. There were things I hated about it. But 50% of the issue that I had with the camera looking back was myself not understanding what a cinema camera is, comparing it to a video camera, not being ready to get my hands dirty enough in my craft to deal with flat, log, data-rich footage. A lot of people see the end result from cinema cameras and they want that instantly, and they don't understand it's not a video camera. You're not going to drag your file to a timeline and it's going to look like that. No, it is up to the artist to create the image based off the canvas. The cinema camera job is to provide you with a data-rich canvas in order to do your thing. And if you're not ready to learn how to do your thing, if you think you're going to slap some LUTs on it, these cameras are not for you. Just because it's in your price range, these cameras are not for you. If you're mad about the fact that you got to add a battery solution and don't got no autofocus, these cameras are not for you. There isn't a cinema camera on the market that doesn't require a whole lot of stuff. They're just giving you the brain. You're getting a lot for your money, especially with this. And if you think it's going to compare with the A6500, A7S, or 5D, this camera is not for you. Again, this camera is for those who want to spend a little more time at the computer, pulling out reds, popping skylines, doing things like that to create a stellar image. You have to think like that before you purchase this camera. The camera is not going to straight out give you a great image. When I bought the 4K production cameras, I didn't get that. I was coming from video cameras. Rec 709, it looks fine, we can edit it, this, that, and the other. I was not prepared for that. It was things like really bad low light. It was black sun issues. It was things like that that turned me off from the camera, and I sold them and went and got A6500s and was happy-go-lucky. However, I've grown a lot since then. I understand what I want. And this camera is now perfect for where I am in my life cycle or video production maturity level. That's something that's extremely important, that you don't jump into this thinking, oh, we're going to have great images. We're going to compete with a red. All the footage normally looks good from reds, not because of just the camera, but people who are willing to invest $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 into that equipment have had the training and education to be able to maximize that equipment. If you're coming from a 5D Mark II, you're not there yet. Not all the time, but normally you're not there yet. So let's talk about the pros and cons of each camera. And one thing I'm going to be honest with you off rip that I'm going to miss about the FS5, the number one thing is the electronic ND filter, man. I cannot tell you how much I love that thing, because you can slap on any lens, get shallow depth of field, and the way they worked it out where it was auto, you can go indoor, that is, I don't understand why it hadn't made it to the FS7 Mark II, 3, whatever. That will probably be in A7S, especially if it's on all the time. Let's say it's on and it's at 0.1. The A7S is so good in low light, you probably wouldn't notice it. Unlike some cameras that really need the direct light on the sensor, the A7S will probably, you wouldn't even notice it. So that is a major feature that I will miss. But there's things you can do to get around that. You can get adapters that go from micro four thirds to EF that have built-in ND filters. You can slap an ND filter on the front of your lens. What we're doing is we're going matte box just to get rid of glare altogether, because we've had some issues with glare in the past. The form factor for the FS5 is perfect. That handheld approach that you can just hold it here and get good shots. The audio was excellent in the FS5. Not onboard audio, connecting the XLR mic to it, the built-in amps and things like that were great with the FS5. Never complained about audio ever. The cons with the FS5 was the codecs. 8-bit, it was great in the beginning, but it sucked. 10-bit, 1080p, and a lot of people say, I don't use what you need all that for. I want the data because I want to tweak the image. I want to customize the image. I want to pull and shift colors and things like that. I need the data. It's important to me now. The Sonys were having an issue with skin tone. You can get the skin tones right on the Sony. Not taking nothing away. It just took more work than with other cameras. If you have a Sony, don't sit here and think, oh, my color's all jacked up, Canon better color science, whatever. That's bull, because you can edit and change all the color you want within the camera. And that's what we did to get the look that we want. But it just took work. It's difficult to do that work on an 8-bit codec compared to a 12-bit codec. So I'm not going to get into our setup here today because I have a special video coming that talks about what we did to set up our Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera, but I was able to use it on a shoot last weekend in Houston. I was even able to stop in Galveston and get some great shots of the beach just to test dynamic range. And I'm gonna be very blunt and honest with you. I love it. I love the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. I Love it. I love the color. I love the dynamic range. I love the functionality. I love the menu. I love the camera itself. Now you have to add stuff to it to get it the way you want it, and that's fine with me. I got a bunch of accessories. I like customizing and tweaking things to work better for the jobs that I have, and I don't miss my FS5 at all. I don't miss it. I miss the ND filters. That's it. Getting used to going to micro four thirds is different. If you don't have a speed booster, it is a super cropped image. However, it's not that bad where you're gonna be like, oh, I gotta put the camera way back. The camera now is not even arm lengths away, and I got a pretty decent lens on it, getting a pretty decent shot. That was the biggest thing for me, and I'm okay with it after working with it on a job. Micro four thirds is not as bad as you think it is coming from full frame. You know, if I want full frame, I'll shoot on the A7R. I bought a few different adapters, Filtrex, Metabones, a non-speed boosted adapter. I had a chance to play around with it. I'm familiar with using Metabones adapters. I like it. I still got a lot of EF glass, that's cinema, like Rokinons and things like that. So those are the lenses that I plan on using on this body. I like it. I think the image is beautiful. Like some of the things you can do with it, I just couldn't do with my FS5. Even using my Adamus recorder, it was difficult to do. And like I said, you're limited so much with this big old 7-inch thing, just yanking on your little, 1/4-inch screw that's on top of your FS5 that's already little, and you got this big old, it was just a lot, man. It was just a lot. And I got tired of it. I got tired of running through batteries. I got tired of running through hard drives and things like the fact that I can record onto a solid state drive using the USB-C. Like that is mind blowing. People don't often talk about the fact that you can record onto an SD card and still capture raw, like 10:1 or something, 8:1 raw. That is mind blowing. Those little things that Blackmagic thought about when they made this camera, it's just a 2019 camera. And I feel like the FS5 is a 2014, 13, 2012 camera. The sensor's old. It was just time to move on. I am 100% happy that I moved on. If you're holding on to an FS5 and you're thinking about it, do it. Flip it. Go get about 3,000. Buy you a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. Buy you a cage. Buy you a handle. Do what you got to do. You will be happy with the image that you get out of it. The onboard audio that I'm using now is pretty freaking decent. You can run one power XLR port, which is cool because, if you're running a powered microphone, how often are you running two? Rarely are you running two. I'm usually running a shotgun mic and that's it. Or two lav mics that are powered. What's dope about it is you can run a lav mic to the XLR, or you can get a 3.5 jack splitter, which makes it left and right, and run two lav mics into that and still be able to control each one, still record to each separate channel on the camera. That is dope. These guys at Blackmagic are thinking, they're thinkers, and they're giving it to you fast. They're giving it to you with updates. I am extremely happy with my purchase. I'm extremely happy with the image. I'm extremely happy with the fact that I can capture stereo sound on board if I'm doing some B-roll or something. I'm extremely happy with the onboard menus. I love this camera and it has become my favorite video camera. I have no regrets whatsoever. I love DaVinci Resolve and it's something that I'm forcing myself to use, and it's been hard because a lot of pre-made title effects and transitions are in Final Cut Pro. But if I want to keep using Final Cut Pro, I can just shoot in ProRes. However, I love Blackmagic Raw. I love the multiple different flavors it gives you. I love what you can do with it, how I can pull it into DaVinci Resolve and change my ISO. And I'm starting to develop a bigger and better relationship with DaVinci Resolve because I believe inevitably you're going to be on DaVinci Resolve. I think Apple needs to do more with its color grading part, and they need to do more with motion to even compete with what DaVinci Resolve is giving you for free with this camera. Fairlight is awesome. Things like image stabilization and noise reduction to be able to grade color and everything right in the same application just does it for me. And the fact that they give it to you for free, I'm just waiting on the support from other companies to start making titles and transitions and things like that. All the open effects plugins that are to come when more of the outside companies start making plugins for it. Then I think it will blow up and take off. But Fusion is so new to a lot of people. I want to learn more about it so I can do more with it. And the fact that I don't have to leave an application. I'm so used to going to After Effects. I'm a Final Cut Pro guy. I use Premiere sometime. It's not my suite of choice. However, I love After Effects and I use After Effects a lot. To have to jump through different applications sucks. It sucks. Let's just be real. Let's just be real with each other. It sucks. To eliminate that is a lot for me. And they've given me everything else I could want. And their updates are bringing it all the freaking time. They're bringing it, bro. They're not... When are we getting updates from Final Cut Pro, man? 1 a year? 2 a year? Forget 2 a year. One of them is just like bug fixes and the ability to turn a knob without the mouse icon disappearing. There's always some little fix like that. There's no major updates. If you look at DaVinci Resolve 16, Beta 1, and Beta 2, it's completely different. You wake up one morning, bam, Beta 3 out. I'm like, oh, snap, let me get it. So they're just making changes. Like, they're bringing it. Like, they got a bunch of guys sitting in a room bringing it. And that's, I want to be with the disruptor. It's a little bit of a gamble. I want to be with the disruptor because those guys get it. They're listening. That's why I switched to Sony, and that's why I switched to Blackmagic. So Sony is still my photography camera of choice, but for video, I had to go with Blackmagic. And like I said, if you have an FS5, if you're thinking about it, man, do it. Sell it while you can still get something for that camera. Because as soon as they drop the FS5 Mark III and it's 4K 10-bit internal, or the A7S Mark III and it's 4K 10-bit internal, that $5,000 camera that you can now get about $3 grand for, you're gonna be begging to get 2 for it. Kind of like a 4K production camera right now. You just can't. It's just not, the market isn't great for it. But I tell you, last video, marry the lenses, date the bodies. Sometimes it don't work out with the bodies. Sometimes you have fun with the bodies, you play around with it, stay a few nights, and you be like, all right, you gotta go. So it happens. Sometimes you just gotta break up. Anyway, if you like this video, man, hit the thumbs up button. If you don't, hit the thumbs down button twice. Tell me what you think. Are you on the fence about this camera? Do you think it's just hype? I know it's a ton of videos on YouTube talking about this camera, but it's a beast, man. They did their thing. And at the price point, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. But I would love to hear what you guys have to think about it. But for me, for a daily talking head, corporate video, on the move use, I love it. Skin tones look so good on it. We shot some stuff that it was just cloudy and dark, and it was just the way it captured the clouds. It's beautiful. Beautiful. I love this camera. I have nothing bad to say about it. People cry about battery life, but the only reason I use the battery is so that I can switch out V-mount batteries. That's the only reason for that battery, or a gimbal. But we'll have more videos talking about the camera, talking about the setup, what we really, really, really like about it. So stay tuned, guys, and I will see you in the next video.